Chapter 1, Section 1 is a little bit of pre-algebra review, and we start out with a few definitions. A variable is a letter that stands for a number. A letter that stands for a number. A constant is something that never changes. It's the same all the time. So a constant is simply a number. A numerical expression is numbers and operators. Let's say operations. It's I-O. Numbers and operations. And by operations, I mean add, subtract, multiply, and divide. And a numerical expression is simply numbers. An algebraic expression is variables and numbers and operations. So an algebraic expression just has the variables thrown in there. Power, this is called the base, and that's called the power. And let's say we have 2 to the 3rd power. That's going to be our example. That means we write 2 times 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8. 4 to the 3rd power means 4 times 4 times 4. 4 times 4 is 16, times 4 is 64. And if you have a graphing calculator and you're using it for the first time, you're going to have this little up arrow button, and you're going to do 4 up arrow 3. Negative 9 to the 2nd power means negative 9 times negative 9. Whenever you use negatives, you should put them in parentheses. Negative 9 times negative 9 is a positive 81. Now this one looks very similar when you first start out. However, this time you'll notice it's not in parentheses. These two things are a little bit different. This means 9 to the 2nd power, which is 81, and then the negative in front of it. So that will be negative 81. 4 examples for you to do. If you were doing this on a graphing calculator, you would do negative 7 up arrow to the 5th, and that means negative 7 times itself 5 times. And if you work that out, it becomes negative 16,807. Number 2, 6 to the 4th power, and then put the negative in front of it. That becomes negative 1,296, and you have to do the 6 to the 4th and then the negative. 3 and 4 look the same. They're 2 different questions. Negative 4 times negative 4 is a positive 16. 4 squared is 16, and then put the negative in front of it, and that is negative 16. For example 2, we're going to take this number and we're going to put it in place of that x. Whenever you use a negative, you're going to want to put parentheses around it. So that means 5 times negative 4 squared. Negative 4 times negative 4 is 16, and 5 times 16 is 80. Make sure you put the parentheses around the negative. Number 2, you will have 4 times negative 3 to the 4th power. Make sure you put parentheses around the negative. Negative 3 to the 4th is 81. And 4 times 81 is 324. Number 3, negative 2 times negative 3 to the 3rd. Negative 3 to the 3rd is a negative 27. And negative 3 times a negative 27 is a positive 81. And negative 6 times 2 to the 3rd. 2 to the 3rd power is 8. And negative 6 times 8 is negative 48. Absolute value, these are the signs that we use for absolute value. And absolute value means the distance from 0. That's the technical mathematical definition, is the distance from 0. I like to use my own made-up definition, and that is just make it positive. So if you ever have a number inside the absolute value signs, you simply make it positive. Absolute value of negative 4 is a positive 4. Absolute value of a negative 6 is a positive 6. Now here we need to do these calculations inside. Negative 11 plus a negative 4 is a negative 15. And the absolute value of negative 15 is a positive 15. Inside the absolute value sign, 4 plus 8 is 12. Absolute value means we make it positive, so it stays 12. And then we have this negative side in front of it, so that becomes negative 12. Number 5, I'm going to simplify this one a little bit. Absolute value of negative 4 is a positive 4. So I just took care of those absolute value signs. And now if you zip-zap that, negative 11 plus a negative 4 is negative 15. Number 6, if we zip-zap that, negative 11 plus 4 is a negative 7. Absolute value makes it a positive 7, and then you put the negative in front. Number 7, inside the absolute value signs, negative 11 plus a negative 7. Negative 11 plus a negative 7 is a negative 18. Absolute value of negative 18 is a positive 18. And 2 times 18 is 36. And number 8, 11 minus 4 is 7. Absolute value of 7 is positive 7. And then you put the negative in front. At the top of our notes, we have the distributive property. And with the distributive property, I'm going to have A, and then inside parentheses, B plus C. And we're going to distribute. If you remember doing that little rainbow thing from middle school math, and that becomes AB plus AC. A coefficient is the number in front of the variable. the number in front of the variable, and like terms have exactly the same variables. And you can only combine those like terms if they have exactly the same variables. So we start out here with some distributing. 3 times 4 is 12. 3 times x is 3x. Over here, when we distribute, that becomes 5yx. We have to do the 5 times the 2, which is 10y. Number 3, 3 times 4 is 12. And then we have an x and a y. There's the subtract sign. And then 3 times 10 is 30. And the x stays in front of it, or behind it, excuse me. Number 4, oops, make that distribute a little bit further. Negative 2 times negative 3 is a positive 6, and then we have an x and a y. Negative 2 times a 7 is a negative 14, and an x squared. Number 5, 14x stays the same, and it's only the 4 that gets distributed. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times x is 4x. 14x plus 4x is 18x, and then we have the 8. And right here, when we put those two things together, that's combining like terms. Number 6, we need to distribute here. That becomes 6x minus 24. And when we distribute here, it's 9x plus 18. 6x and 9x. 6 plus 9 is 15. So we combine those like terms. Negative 24 plus 18 will be a negative 6. Number 7, distribute here. Negative 5x. Negative 5 times a negative 3 is a plus 15. 3x times 2x. 3 times 2 is 6. So that becomes 6x squared. 3x times negative 4 is a negative 12x. Combining these like terms, you have an x squared, you have a negative 12x, and then a 15. Over here, when you distribute, that becomes 9 minus 3x minus 4. The negative gets distributed to both of those. And then minus 6x. Combining these two like terms, you have a negative 9x, and a 9 minus 4 is 5. Number 9, that will become a negative 3x, a minus 9, and a minus 4x. You have to give that negative to the entire quantity. Negative 3x minus 4x is a negative 7x minus 9. Example 6, Anything times 0 is 0. Anything times 0 is 0. Number 3, when you divide by 0, that's not possible. You'll get an error message on your calculator, so that's undefined. Number 4, 6 divided by 0 is undefined. Number 5, 0 times anything is 0. 6, 0 times anything is 0. Number 7, when you divide by 0, it's undefined. And number 8, when you divide by 0, it's undefined. At the top of the next page, we have some adding fractions. In order to add fractions, we have to get the same denominator. So I'm going to multiply both of these by 3. And then that will become negative 3/6 plus negative 5/6. I got the same denominator. Negative 3 plus negative 5 is negative 8/6. And when you divide both sides by 2, you get negative 4/3. Number 2, getting the same denominator here, I'm going to multiply these both by 2, which will give me a denominator of 12. And multiply those both by 3 will give us a denominator of 12. So that will become 14 over 12 plus a negative 9 over 12. 14 plus negative 9 is 5 over 12. Number 3, we're going to multiply the first one here by 2. And that makes our bottom number 12. We're going to multiply both of these by 3. And you see how we have subtract a negative here? That becomes an addition. 3 times 3 is 9. 4 times 3 is 12. 14